Hello, guys. So our next presenter is Yaraslau Kot, uh, who works in Farm 51 Game Studio and also one of the founders and actually founder of BelGameDev. And today we are going to find out how it is creating a game for the blind people.
Hello,
I give you the phone. Yeah.
yeah. Hello. Thank you very much, Eugenia. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you at this wonderful conference, and thank you for coming. And uh, today I will share with you something personal. We all wanted to get some kind of distraction from what's going on, as a team of Games Gathering, is very active with all the events, and we decided to so I decided to uncover one of the old projects. Today we will speak about games for blind people. Not many people know that it's a separate industry. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm Yaraslau Kot. Nice to meet you. I'm in game development industry since 1996. Started working in the United States for America Online was my first job, and since then I worked all over the world and worked on over 100 projects. Also, I am a researcher. I published and research over 100 text articles and books on games, and I got a couple of degrees, and all on games, of course. Right now I'm working for Farm 51 Game Studio. Also, uh, I'm co-organizer of Games Gathering and Game Industry Conference, and doing some other interesting projects. And BelGameDev is the former Belarusian Game Developers Association, which I was founder of. Now it's in exile, like everything is good there. Okay, now uh, the contents of this lecture would be following, so you would know what to expect, and if it seems boring, you would know what you will be able to expect in the future. First, I will tell you about the scalar problem. Well, for some it's problem, for some it's a market. Before considering if it's a small feat doing a game for blind people, or should you can basically see the numbers and decide for yourself if this market is worthy of you coming into it. Then I will tell you about my first project for blind children, and how I came into all that, and a little bit how I got uh, to help to do some of the coolest games for blind people. Then we will analyze some of the titles which are popular, but we don't really know uh, that they are actually very famous among people with limited accessibilities. And we will also discuss some of the features which will make games more accessible for people with impaired vision and blind people. So that's and then we will have question and answer round. So please stay tuned, and for the following hour, let's be friends. So, talking about the scale of the market, the uh, European Blind Union. There is such a union, actually, yes, and it's actually sponsored by European Union, and it's a big community. They estimate over 30 million blind and partially sighted persons in geographical Europe, which gives a quite a big market for a game developer. Also, International Agency for Prevention of Blindness, uh, they actually report, using World Health Organization as well, that there are over 338 million people living with blindness and moderate to severe visual impairment. Of course, it's a very big number, and we will consider that a lot of this such people actually uh, live in the areas which not very a market, not cannot be considered as a market for a game developer. So But still, if you look at the numbers for Europe, you can see that there is market. And in United States, the numbers are complex. I didn't publish it because they're kind of weird. For example, in 2012, the report was that they have 12 million of people with impaired vision, uh, 12 million over age of 40. Also, they have number that 6.5% of US citizens uh, under 18 years actually have impaired vision. So it's not exact number, and they have all these numbers around. So it was very difficult to consider and take it seriously, or to deduce something from it. So. But World Health Organization actually mentioned that at least 2.2 billion people in the world have problems with vision impairment. So that's quite a huge number of people. We can see that this market actually a valid market. Interesting that there are not many players on the market, and it's a hungry market. If you making usual game for people with when you made it, you compete with hundreds of other games, with old games, new games, and you compete actually for their time. And with blind people, you don't really compete because they don't have that much uh, of the selection of entertainment, and not only entertainment on any narrative. That gives you an edge. Of course, it's nice to deliver a quality product because it just will not be accessed. There is a whole world of the industry for blind people in game industry, and I'm happy that I discovered it. It helped me to become better narrative designer, better game designer, and let me tell you my story, how it happened. So let's begin. So my first project for blind was done almost 100 almost 10 years ago. So sorry for me, yes, it's like 100 years. So much happened, especially the last few years. So it's published actually in the collab in a book 2004, in 2014, called LARPing Out of Sight. If anyone wants to have find more information on it, you can find some of it there. uh, uh, First project was with charities. First of all, I was inspired by a friend of mine who was a musician, and while I'm a game designer, and when you're a game designer and you work in game industry, you perceive a whole world through games, and you think how to fix problems or correct some problems in the world. You're also thinking about how to do it with games. So one friend of mine, Alexei Kretchet, he was a genius vocalist. He studied in school of ABBA. He traveled all over the world, won a lot of prizes. But still, it was very tough for him finding work at corporate celebrations and so on and so on, because visually he wasn't pleasant. Even though his voice was brilliant in Belarus, well, our show business is not as developed, and he lived in Belarus, even though traveled for vocal competitions all over the world. He wasn't that demanded, because when he got blind people, they don't use mimics as normal people, and they have this, you know, sometimes repulsive masks. And uh, well, looking at it and discussing it with him and his wife, I thought, why don't I try to make life easier and better for some children, because they don't even see, blind children when they are born. They don't see how to make mimics and how mimics actually affect people. They don't feel it that much. Uh, they're not like people with eyesight who can look in the mirror and correct their mimics. We're looking at the mirror all the time. They were choosing like how to smile better, how to uh, speak better, how to make like our photo look and everything. But they do not have this opportunity. So I thought, why don't that's an interesting challenge for game designers. So for me, was the main challenge in this project to teach blind children mimics. How to do that? I decided to work with two charities which I worked with in Belarus. I was trustee of Independent Children's Aid and Medicine Chernobyl, both international charities. uh, uh, I wrote a project and offered that to them for some sponsorship, and we actually in 2012 and 2013 we decided to hold this 1 year, almost 1 year experiment. We took one talented theater director, Shilova Tatiana, and wrote a couple of scripts on the games. Uh, and we decided to include in work with blind children, children with eyesight. For that, we needed to prepare them. And two groups of children we've met. So, of course, we discussed everything with parents and so on. So, and the meta would be uh, as if it's like a theater club where they rehearse big play. We were thinking about the which play would be the easiest, and we thought about Little Prince because it has uh, characters which are easier to relate for children of fifth grade. Those were mainly fifth graders there, and we decided uh, to prepare those teams to meet each other before we will start proper rehearsal. So we actually gave children with eyesight from the CM72 to play live action role playing games and games where they would play blind people, how so they could relate to the problems, to develop their empathy and so on. And after we've done that, so we included them actually in the group with blind children, and that way they already knew how blind children felt a little bit, and it was easier for them to relate how to assist blind children. Then we broke them into pairs, and they had some team building activities like and as well as rehearsals and other larps. But among that, the main idea was to create something like mask of emotion. Uh, Children with eyesight were like shaping faces of blind children within a game, and they had to shape certain emotion, and the children and blind children had to remember how it felt with muscles, using muscle memory, and somehow repeat it later when they're needed to translate certain emotion, so they would be able to communicate without speech. So it was kind of interesting, and we had to play it regularly with different settings and scenarios, so they would hold it better, so their memory would capture it better, and in the future they would be able to translate their emotions through mimics, and will actually learn to use their mimics, because without using them, some muscles on their faces even become like get atrophy, and not able to be used in more senior age. So that was the main idea, and it kind of worked. Worked in ways we didn't even expect. First of all, uh, what happened with children with eyesight? Yeah, they had additional interesting impact, which made to me as game designer uh, very interesting conclusions. Uh, and I got interested in this area altogether. Children with eyesight they had to learn to perceive world through audio, and because they worked with children, with blind children, they learned to listen more, and they learned to be more tactile, to touch each other more, and to communicate through touch, through physical contact as well. That actually translated into interesting outcomes in the family. Feedback from parents was that children become more um, communicative. Of course, they become more manipulative because they could asking parents, they could enforce their request with touching a hand or something, and parents could feel that it actually helps. Also, they noticed that children started listening to music and their taste in music changed. They started enjoying more rich and more melodic music. They started closing in closing themselves in their rooms without light, uh, feeling music through, and sometimes turning on audiobook. So they started using imagination more, and their memories, of course, improved. That is, blind children had also interesting effect. They had, besides the mimics and more brave interaction with other children, they got interesting result. They actually, we had one of the games, we changed half of the school into like dark dungeon, and it was full darkness, and there were different clues which were hidden in braille and in some other ways, and we wanted the idea was for blind children to feel that they're needed, and in this in this circumstance, in this dark dungeon like game, uh, the setting was designed so blind children would have an edge over children with eyesight because they have more experience to living in the darkness, and everyone was dropped there separately, and they had to, and from different places, and they all had to think how to survive. And children with eyesight, many of them understood that to survive and go through this maze, they have to actually they have to find a blind child who would lead them through because he has more chances to survive. And it was interesting because in the last entrance and the last exit from the maze, there were like parents, and it was like a little celebration, and children, blind children, were coming out, hold having children with eyesight holding their shoulders. So they were the leaders, they were the victors, the saviors of other children, and they get a lot of positive feedback on it, and it changed their victim uh, uh, victim attitude. It's interesting. It changed their attitude from victims to people, to comprehension of that they are different, but they have their own edge over other people, and they could take advantage in it in some occasions, and they that what they should do to be successful in life, and uh, that not only they have some kind of disability, or not only they have some kind of impairment, but people with eyesight don't develop some senses uh, be- because they don't have to, and it means that blind children can be more advanced in some areas. So it kind of interesting additional outcome. The play was interesting also to rehearse, and it helped with virtual reality games in the future and other games, because blind children, they had interesting ways of rehearsing their character, of getting into character. For them, it was important to feel in character, not how they look, but what smells they have, uh, what uh, what material they hold. They had this interesting approach to detail and association with characters, which is quite interesting. Also, was for everyone in the project. It was very developing experience, and that led me farther on. So in the future, uh, this audio wouldn't work, but it was, and it's to the good. Usually, in lecture in virtual reality on blind people, I would turn on the rain, but unfortunately, when I listened to it last time today, to me for the first time in 2 years, it sounded to me not like the rain, but like the sound of rubble and dust falling on the roof from the explosion nearby. So let's I wanted to show that if you close your eyes initially, and you hear the sound of rain, you can feel it. You feel yourself in virtual reality. So it's interesting. After this project, I managed to. It led me to think about games of this genre of game. How is it? We're so used to video games, to text-based games as well, but what how they perceive the world. For them, virtual reality is only sound, Dolby Surround, yes, but only sound, and it was very fascinating, to get deep into it. So basically, if you don't have the eyesight, the sound of the rain would be virtual reality for you, and without a lot of negative aspects of virtual reality. So uh, I started researching and working in that area, and I got to audiogames.net and other web pages alike. Audio games, actually, it's a whole genre which is opposed to video games, computer games, whose main output is sound rather than graphics, which is interesting because you're starting to take pay more attention to sound, to uh, and as a game designer, you start to that dimension of design becomes deeper, and using sound, games can have dimensions of atmosphere and possibilities for gameplay that don't exist with visuals alone, as well as providing games far more accessible to people with all levels of sight disability. So it kind of interesting. At this webpage, by the way, you can find over 800 games advised, which blind people can actually play. And in the future, through some kind of research, publication, and work, I was also I got lucky and got invited to advise on awesome project. Uh, and that project is, if I may ask, moderator to turn on the video file. Close your eyes, and I will show you our trailer.
Domino and France Culture present
Help! Open the door!
A Blind Legend.
Take the ball!
Who are you?
My name is Edward Blake.
The Blind Knight.
Mother! Louis!
Are you deaf as well as blind?
I have come for my wife.
Who dares to sully the land of my ancestors?
Tell me when to jump!
You're a monster!
Back, demons!
Well, thank you very much, Virginia. This trailer, if you're interested, you can find on YouTube and some other trailers. It's quite interesting how the trailer could be only audio and visuals just added just for the sake of it, because we're visuals and we needed something. But a lot of games which hit the top mark as being very popular in that industry, they don't even have their own logo, or they don't even have their own poster, which is quite remarkable to think about it. This Blind Legend was delivered already many years ago, and it's a mobile role-playing game which is also free, and you can play it on mobile. You can play it on desktop, but with mouse as well. It's adopted, and it's been quite successful. Like hundreds of thousands of people. I think over 500,000 people downloaded in Google Play and in some other stores as well. Quite a few, and it's actually interesting how this industry works. For people who are used to visual perception, like most of us, it's very difficult to play audio games at the beginning. Especially, we have to develop our senses and our audio memory and everything. And if you play it, I bet that most of you will feel tired after a certain time. you will feel tired playing audio game, because interesting, even though our senses overloaded visually in our everyday work and mobile and computer and everything, but we also somehow maybe addicted to this visual. We need it, we need to have it time to time. And also we kind of underdeveloped our audio skills, and uh, maybe because of many sounds there, it's subject to a lot of other people's researches. But it's fascinating that it's unusual for us to use our audio senses for even entertainment and enjoyment. We listen to music all the time, but do we truly listen to it? And can we actually interact with audio dimension, not just turning on and off like mobile call or music in our apartment, but actually interacting audio when you're attacked and you have to react and everything? How quick our precision through audio perception is. It's very interesting that it's not as quick as video perception until you practice. And so basically every audio game for non-blind person is also quite an interesting way to develop own self. We get more dimensions of precision, and the world around us becomes richer. So it's very interesting area. Yeah. So the Blind Legend, by a fascinating French studio, and was sponsored by the government, and it's actually quite an interesting experience and trip. I would advise you all, maybe when on the way to some conference or from conference, if you would like to get some kind of relaxation, just dive into the action. And and luckily, it leads me to the next part of our discussion. Some of the famous and top inclusive games in right now in the world, and why. Also, because Blind Legend actually one of the top ones, and if you look at a lot of different top games for blind ratings, Blind Legend will be there, definitely one of the top ones, uh, if they know about it, because it made its mark, and opened new horizons, and in 3D sounds, narrative. And it was an honor being tiny beanie and insignificant but part of it, and hope it will inspire you to go on more. So let's dive into our hit list, so to say, of the games for people with impaired vision. Okay, just to surprise you, one of those games is at Nintendo 64 is actually Mario 64. Even though it was published in 1996, it was so well designed that actually blind people could play it. What do you think was the reason? Of course, a very good sound. Basically, everything what happens there, uh, had sounds accompanying it. Every action, every counteraction, and interaction. So uh, it was easy. Well, not too easy, but it was possible for blind people to play it and actually have some a joyful experience. So this game was done extremely well, and even better than a lot of people, a lot of Mario games that followed it. Also, from this franchise, I would say that Mario Kart is also very popular and for blind people to play and people with impaired vision, because as well as Mario here, and as two-dimensional Mario's, it's incredibly well sounded. And basically, if you have experience of being without sight and imagination developed, and audio memory developed well enough, you really can actually uh, play play it and do some high scores and record breaking, so maybe some speed run as well. Another quite interesting game which not many of you maybe heard, is Lost and Hound by Brian Fairbanks. Actually, this game was designed especially for for people with impaired vision, and it's interesting that it actually uh, has situations and missions from real life rescue dog operations. So you have to execute different actions uh, based uh, on hearing of the dog, and you have to rescue people, and that really uh, gives opportunity to people with impaired vision to play it. Also, a lot of huge wonderful feedback followed after this game, because even though it's visually quite appealing, uh, and people with eyesight can play it as a normal game without noticing anything. It has very good sound design, and uh, and the people without eyesight can actually navigate themselves through the world and actually be successful in doing stuff. Another very popular headliner game is Far Cry: The New Dawn by Ubisoft. Quite an interesting, uh, quite an interesting how a lot of modern headliner games, they actually give a lot of effort into making themselves accessible to people with impaired vision, blind people, and that is Far Cry New Dawn, one of the headliners of it. It's interesting that uh, it's interesting that this game actually includes colorblind modes available, and there are different types of color blindness and vision disabilities, which are not usually discussed, and they actually thought about it, and daltonism and the protanopia and a lot of other. Uh, and it's actually when certain types of color specters are not perceived by a person, and that's fascinating because to include it in the game, it actually took a lot of time and effort. Also, there are various features in the game which support uh, support audio confirmation of visual happenings. So if something happens, you have sound effects about it, and blind people actually can perceive it as well and play and react in game. Also, they have auto drive option, and which is very valuable for blind people because that is very difficult to do inside of the game. For blind people, with no matter what how accessible it is to drive real time. And also, of course, one of the features which is important is aiming assist, which makes it very difficult. Of course, blind people don't play Counter Strike that well, um, but actually, this game. It seems to some people that it's too easy, but to play with aiming assist. But many games, good games, they have it optional, so you can turn it off and on, which makes it very respectful when someone actually done it in their game. This game also has vibration feedback, which gives another dimension of feedback for blind people, which not many players enjoy and turn off, maybe for the sake of keeping batteries run longer. But for visually impaired people, it's important part of the experience. And indeed, also also voice communication is very important. So when you have chats where you can discuss and talk, it's actually uh, it's actually a high moment for the games, modern games. there are a lot of stories how people who lost their eyesight would play like Halo, for example, and games like that, finding companions who are not like record breakers, but could also just play for enjoyment, and they were actually getting quite good instructions on audio, where to run, how to do, what to throw. Sometimes other characters would take them in get them in the car and would ride them around the world, and people and telling them where to shoot, like to the left, to the right, and so on. It would create new experience and interaction, socialization. That's what people actually play the games now as well, socialization, and it's very important to have audio opportunity. Okay, another popular games for visual impaired, you haven't heard of it, definitely, which is strange because the hearing of it is all you can do, because they don't even have a game log or a game or they don't even have the game poster or anything. Actually, Shades of Doom is very interesting game, which is absolutely everything happens audio. It it's a groundbreaking experience to which inspired me, and I hope you will try it just for the sake of self development as game designer or something. It has fascinating sounds of nature, of the wind in passages and rooms, and every piece of equipment has its sound, but basically you don't really see anything. So just just using echo, footsteps, just experiment. You actually they made it relatively simply, so key commands are easy to remember, and they created their own music. Uh, they designed awesome 3D audio effects, and everything is very realistic. How it is realistic from point of view of audio, and they actually were going through audio like perception, psychology, so to say, and that's very respectful work they've done, and that company is very interesting for many to research if there are researchers or just industry connoisseurs. They are creating games like that, already few of them, and each next is better than the other as technologies develop. So feel free to play. Okay, and that is a surprise for you. No, actually, for blind people, fighting games are the easiest to play because there are a lot of sound cues, so to say, sound markers to remember. And Mortal Kombat 11 is one of the most blind friendly. They actually have certain sound which precedes each moves, each special move, and they have also certain sounds which work or when players far away from each other or closer, and that gives opportunity to blind people to actually hear, remember, and react adequately. So uh, an environment interaction gives them opportunity to perceive what their opponent is doing, which is quite fascinating. Okay, the time is running up, so I'll be really close. And here is the there is accessibility rating, which is different from blind games, but accessibility is also for people with different types of disabilities, and there is rating which is checked on regularly. And here is the last top chart for 2000. uh, you can see the top 10 games with accessibility friendly, and that's actually The Last of Us Part 2, actually one of the top on all ratings. They really done a lot to give opportunity to people with different levels of blindness, visual disability to play them, uh, and those color deficiency, adjustable front side, hug scaling, and contrast setting is not the only. Those are not the only. not the only markers which there are to determine which is the best. I will tell you later which are, but probably you don't know what these are. So adjustable font size, the ability to change the size of text in game. Yes, that is known. But HUD scaling, not everyone knows, but whether the user interface can be changed to a different size, which is also quite useful for people with partial sight loss, and contrast setting, whether there is an inbuilt control over the level of visual contrast, which is very different from difference between dark and light. Most games have like darker, brighter, but that's absolutely different from contrast. Contrast is absolutely different characteristic, and you shouldn't mix them if you're talking about accessibility and games for blind people. Actually, those are the markers which are used when determining the score for the best accessibility feature rank games. Okay, so highest rated platform is chosen, and from that is research done. They look at the Metacritic score, which also they take into account. They look into color deficiency support, details, opportunity to change them, field of view settings, adjustable front side, aim assist. We already discussed it. It's very important for blind people, because unfortunately aiming with precision is not that their cup of tea. Controller vibration, rebundable control, HUD scaling, contrast setting, advanced audio options, which could include additional interesting innovative features which you could actually invent yourselves. So basically, and then the ranked is determined. And so far, indeed, after all that, there are many games they have. But it's interesting that if you look overall, then World of Warcraft is on the second place, and some other games, if you look, them are still, yes, of high ranked. So in particular, what you need to we'll discuss to make games better and more accessible. You need to think about, for example, someone to vocally make text, to read the text, to have some kind of audio narrative, to change the text sizes, so incorporate all text possible into speech, have some maybe uh, um, lock on aim, which we discussed already, where shooting or whatever targeting it could be, for example, targeting with items, interaction, and so on. Audio cues for movement and combat, that's very important, and that makes a big difference, like we discussed in fighting games. Ability to skip certain sections that are harder to for those with impairment. Those are trailers and cutscenes, which AAA games, for example, have a lot. So you can just skip them and have a little sum up with text after that, which could be useful for people with impaired visions, and quite enough. And also ability to adjust contrast levels beyond that of gaming platform, and customable difficulty levels, so the players can choose how challenging the game is. And also, as we mentioned, that a lot of these options, a lot of these features could be optional, so other type of gamers could have their own enjoyable experience. For those are just a few of recommendations, but there are many more, and I hope that this world of games for blind people will capture a piece of your life as well and make you a better person. Thank you very much. I'm open for questions.
Yaroslav, thanks a lot for the presentation. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time, but still, I have a question for you. Speaking about you as a game designer, how do you understand what the blind people need in context of the gameplay features?
Well, people need more narrative. They're really interested in narrative, and they want to have similar experience to what we actually had uh, through video games. And they want it to be closer, and also because there are not a lot of opportunities for them to have this experience. They want to have different stories. Not many of them have the stories to play in. So if you manage to make an audio game or whatever game for blind people, try to make another with another setting, with another story, because they don't have that many. um, that's a really place where you don't have a lot of competition, and maybe people might, they need more of developers. They need more of game developers in their area. Yeah.
Thanks. And are you working on any new projects?
Well, right now I'm working on a couple of projects. Unfortunately, they are not for blind people. I'm working with Farm 51 on Chernobyl 2, and working with some indie companies on some other hidden projects. Hopefully, you'll enjoy them, and in the future they will be announced. And uh, I will definitely do my best to put all I know about audio and all I learned from games to blind people into those games. Hopefully, it will create another dimension of experience to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot again.